So last Monday was 2 weeks. So yeah, for me. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So 2 weeks and 4 days I made it with no coffee.
Yeah. You have coffee now.
I will need to get more once we're done with this because this is not a full cup, so it doesn't.
Doesn't count.
I don't get my full amount then.
um, yeah, I'm still going without. I just don't have the craving for it. So I'm just kind of like, yeah, we'll just keep going, see how long it goes.
I don't know. It's pretty good.
Yeah, coming from an addict.
I
don't know.
wondered.
This is pretty good.
I wondered when I went back to it if you know how like when you start drinking coffee, black coffee is such a taste
Yeah.
that I was curious if I would then not like it or something, or if it would be too wild.
2 weeks, and you're like, my whole
Well,
world has changed. I
no,
don't know if I'll like it.
because remember I told you when me and Abby were doing the protein powder in the coffee, we were doing that like every day over the weekends. That when I went back to just regular coffee, it like tasted funky because I was so used to that sweetness or flavoring mixed with the coffee that even just doing that frequently, it made this espresso taste like
Yeah.
this is intense.
I wonder if that's because you were having something sweeter to where like you haven't been doing anything sweeter.
Sure.
It's just been like the same thing but without coffee. Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example of how quickly your taste buds can change or how you can
Yeah.
quote unquote crave like the sweetness of something, and when you taste something that's not. They talk about that with like fruit all the time. If you're having like sugary stuff all the time, fruit tastes bland to you. But then
Yep.
if you don't have that for a long time and you go like eat an orange or eat an apple or something, it's like super tart and actually sugary and sweet or whatever that like it actually kind of
I feel like you
take you
think like
back.
strawberries and apples. Like when I was a kid, I would eat strawberries with sugar. I would dip it in sugar and eat strawberries like that. My grandparents would do that with like grapefruit and like
Yeah.
put sugar over like raspberries and blackberries. But then you eat them plain like an apple. It's sometimes hard to eat because of how sugary it is. Like I feel like I get gut rot for how much sugar is in it when I'm not used to
Yeah.
that. It's like my stomach isn't used to having ice cream and having donuts and having all this sugary cereal and then an apple. It's like that's not going to affect my stomach.
No.
But
Yeah. Well, to me it's just the I don't know, I never get like a stomach ache or anything for it from it. It's just like the tartness of it. Oranges always do that, it seems like. They're just so
oh, really?
yeah, just like so citrusy tart. It's like kind of just like your tongue just feels weird.
What's your thoughts on the protein that we're using right now with the no flavor?
I like it. I mean, it's kind of why I chose it. No flavor because it's just the flavorings is just where everything is funky.
Sure.
So, um, it just added more added processed stuff into it. So I just decided to get unflavored and I just mix cacao powder in for the flavoring because it's a little bit more natural and not whatever they're using.
I kind of like it because I think then you can mix and match. Like I'll get sick of the flavors. Like if we would just get chocolate or vanilla, it's like after a while you're excited for the next flavor to where every day I can do something different. Like if I mix it with berries, it actually tastes like berries, not chocolate and vanilla with berries.
Yeah.
Or even the other day I did it with the rest of the watermelon.
Oh,
That was good. Like doing like a sweet or like a more tart,
yeah.
unusual type of fruit.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah. I think that's the nice part about the unflavored is you can mix it up. I just don't like all the flavorings and stuff. It's like, you go to a protein shake type thing or protein powder and it's processed, and I like to try to stay away from that as much as I can, but it's hard to get enough protein just through eating and meat and stuff like that without, I don't know, going broke basically. But the protein powders seem to be a big pack of the punch for your protein. 25 grams is the one that we have, but then you're kind of getting all the stuff that comes along with it that's not that great, and one of the things being all the flavorings. It's like,
Yeah.
cookie dough, peanut butter, all these fake flavors that aren't real. Like, well, I don't want all that junk to come with it. And some of it too is like, people have a hard time with whey protein. Their stomach feels weird from it, and I was just like, well, maybe try it without the flavorings because it
I
could
haven't
be
had
that.
any issues with that one.
Yeah.
I shouldn't
That's
say that.
also like 100% grass fed.
Yeah.
So I think there's that element to it too. But like, it's just all the junk. It's the added flavors and all that sort of stuff. And the more that you can strip that stuff away from anything, your whole diet, I think you start to realize that it's not, I have a gluten intolerance. It's all the crap that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like our wheat being sprayed with a bunch of crap, and then it's pesticides, herbicides, and then it gets in the flour, and then you're digesting or eating that flour, and it's not that you're gluten intolerant, it's that your body doesn't react well to pesticides. That's
Yeah.
what it is. So then you go get, organic flour, and all of a sudden you don't really have the issues. It's like, yeah, because it wasn't ever the flour.
I think that's what is nice. I've been thinking about that the last couple of days of the knock on eating healthier. Like we've had episodes talking about the raw milk and the raw dairy, and most people, especially I think in the female space, are like stay away from dairy at all costs because that's what's going to cause skin issues. That's what's going to cause your hormonal stuff to get all out of whack.
Which is crazy because like hormones are fueled by fat and lipids, and
I know. So I am all on the dairy train now.
you're on the milk truck.
Yeah. Like on oh yeah, also I want to say we are back on Instagram full force doing that, and we are on TikTok now. So maybe you could put the handles on both. But on the videos that I've been posting and looking at hashtags, and one I did with the raw milk, one of them that keeps popping up as a popular one is raw milk revolution. I'm hoping that they're like, this is enough of a trend where more people are getting exposed to it. It's one thing to, switch over and do that yourself, but I think to just have, that's where the negative side of food that we get, I think that's how we can overpower it and fight it per se, is just through information. Because then at least you know about it. You maybe are making tiny bits of changes that are better. You might not be buying raw milk or buying raw everything with the dairy aspect, but it's still the awareness of it. But what I was saying is I think the knock is because it's hard to find and it's expensive. I think because it's becoming potentially more popular and more common knowledge, it will then become in more common places, which I think would be cool. But then the expense part of it, why I think living in a certain way with this health mindset that we're in right now, I would then just not have dairy then anymore.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that, to where, okay, we have certain things that are maybe higher quality or more expensive, but we also don't eat a plethora of things. So I think it just makes your nutrition and your awareness of nutrition easier, because then you just have to focus on less things.
Oh yeah, totally.
Versus you go in someone's fridge, they might have oat milk and almond milk and regular milk, and do I have whole milk or skim milk, and then what do I use for what? It's like, just keep it simple. This is the only thing I have. It's the same product every single time at the grocery store. You know what you're going to get. There's not like, well, is this flavoring bad, or I don't know what these ingredients are. You just kind of eat the same things. And the simplicity of that, I think, is helpful for myself, but I think is helpful for people in a space that is, I think, talked about being confusing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like what you say all the time of the less decisions that you have to make, it seems like the less stress you then have. So it's like if you're able to just eliminate how many decisions you have to make all the time, you're going to be probably better off. And especially when it comes to the diet and nutrition type of stuff, it's like it is so confusing because you just, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. Like all I can think, probably because I'm rereading this book about the stock market, is it's like it used to be, it's like that, but way back when. Like people would just like hear stock tips on the train, or like their uncle would say like, "Oh, buy this stock." And it's like based on what? That's what the nutrition, like health and nutrition is now. It's like people just say like, "Oh, I heard that like cheese is really good for you actually." It's like, okay, where'd you hear that from?
Yeah.
What on what basis? It's like people just blurting stuff out. And like you said, the more information that you can gather from it, the less decisions you have to make and the simpler it becomes, to where, like you said, with the dairy stuff, it's like if we weren't getting raw milk or raw dairy, we just wouldn't get it anymore because, it's not a ginormous staple in our life, or it's just like it doesn't, the pasteurized and all that kind of stuff, we just, our view on it just doesn't benefit you really with all of the bacteria that's killed off and everything like that. So there, one decision down. It's like now you
Yeah.
can move along. And with when it comes to the protein powder too, it's like I'd love to not have that and get all my protein from meat, but meat is expensive, and protein powder is cheaper per ounce than like getting more meat. So if it ever came to a point where we're able to like raise our own animals and do that sort of thing, I would then probably get off protein powder if I'm able to consume enough meat, and it's cheaper for us overall to do it too. It's just right now it's like we have to buy all of our food. We don't have a farm to, raise animals and grow crops and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm just going to do this for right now, but hopefully in the future that can be something where I don't have any processed foods in my diet at all. But you got to take some good with the bad. It's like at this point, I kind of feel like the added 25 grams of protein to get me closer to my protein target is worth the
Powder
downside of
delivery
it.
mechanism.
Yeah, the downside of it being processed and all that kind of stuff. So that's the little give and take you got to play. But I think you should try to minimize that as much as possible. Like that is one of the few things that's highly processed that we eat. So it's like, okay, one out of the whole diet is a highly processed source. Okay,
That and the
I'll do that.
creatine maybe.
Yeah, the creatine with it. So it's like, I'll take that. But if my whole diet is that, I'm waking up and it's a, you know, bagel with cream cheese, and then it's
You're really on this bagel with cream cheese thing.
you brought it up in the last
I
episode.
did?
Yes.
Oh.
It's the bagel with cream cheese, and then
I mean, when is the last time you had a bagel with cream cheese?
I can't.
Years, probably?
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I had a bagel.
I love bagels.
Yeah, I wonder how you can
Those
make 'em.
Dave's bagels, oh my gosh. I love them so much. I
Why
just
don't you
remember.
marry 'em?
Well, me and Abby used to have them on the road. We used to have them when we would be on those weekends. They were so easy and whatever, but they
Yeah.
had, I mean, it's processed protein. It's like probably mixed with protein powder and why they have
Yeah.
it high protein in it, but
Well, I think
man, they're good.
I think how we're looking at the diet stuff a lot of the time is what's the quality of it, not just the macro hunting and, well, this says it's got 10 grams. Like this cereal has 10 grams of protein. Okay, but it's cereal. Like it's not going to be high quality protein that's coming from a meat source or coming from like a legume or a vegetable or something that was living.
Mhm.
It's coming from this like processed manufactured thing. So it's like, this isn't going to be as high quality as the other stuff.
Yeah. That is a benefit or the benefit of social media, I think. Now being on more platforms with us, but also just over time, it is definitely my algorithm of what I'm seeing, and I'm sure it's fitting my narrative and it's fitting what lifestyle I'm trying to live. So it's just
Yeah.
feeding me more of that. But I have to believe that it's sneaking into other people's viewpoints of health and the prioritizing of that and fitness. Like I feel like a few years ago it was heavy on the fitness side because that was also becoming more of a trend with the influencers and being able to get brand deals with Gymshark and certain gyms and having supplement brands attached to you. That was the whole fitness scene, to where now with a lot of the podcasts that we watch where they're getting Casey Means and those type of people that are within systems that we are finding to be a little bit funky and corrupt,
Yeah.
that now it's bleeding into the food industry and how we're farming and chemicals that we're using that are unnecessary, that is seeping into what I believe is most people's news source, which is social media, that I'm seeing constantly people moving out into the country and they're living off their land and they're raising animals and they're having their kids be raised in that type of environment. The homeschooling your kids idea is becoming way more prevalent. I mean, even just kids that we teach, like in real life, it's becoming more prevalent. And then same thing with the raw dairy and the eating certain types of, like, it could again just be my algorithm, but for how big it is, it's definitely reaching more people to where they are turning, I think, and at least being shown that there's other types of living and lifestyles and eating and nutrition
Yeah.
and fitness.
Well, it's not zero. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
you cut back to 4 years ago, that wasn't in the algorithm or that wasn't being shown.
Yeah.
To where now there is more of it. So I'm sure it's both. Like there's some it's actually happening and more people are doing that, and there's some that it's not.
Well, like you think of how quickly girls in fitness and like lifting weights and doing that, how quickly that took off. Granted, quickly as in maybe a 5-year span, but
Yeah.
to make that such a cultural change, like that was social media, that was podcasts, that was having it being shown to people that they maybe don't go to a gym, so they're not even around that, but they're on social media.
Yeah.
That I think that's a cool. It's dangerous because you could also get a lot of bad information pushed out to a lot of people very fast.
You're going to get the charlatans.
But I think if there's a positive of that kind of stuff, I think you don't have that weird hippie lady that you hear talk about different
Raw
food
dairy.
and raw dairy.
Yeah.
It's like, some chick that looks like a regular girl is talking about it on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. I think COVID probably had a big point in all that too. All that stuff. I mean, the working out, it's like how many people are now posting this, how you can work out from home and what things you need to do for that. Because people used to just go to the gym and maybe push machines or whatever. And it's like, well, you don't have a whole gym at home. So what are you going to do? And then same with I don't know how much of an impact. It seems like more of the impact is coming from like, look at how bad our food is and how much chemicals and toxins and all that kind of stuff is in our food, and maybe that's why it seems like that's more of a driver of why people are thinking about and putting into action like growing their own food a little bit more. But same thing, you wonder with COVID, with how many of those grocery stores that all of a sudden didn't have food on the shelves, the things that you would always get, or just like it was scary to go to the grocery store for some people, and you start to realize like, wow, if we didn't have food, like I don't know how to grow food. I don't know how to provide food for myself or family or whatever. So I kind of maybe need to figure that out or try something else. And that maybe scared more people into needing to do that or having to do that than anything.
Well, that's when you started the sourdough, doing the sourdough.
Yeah. Yeah, I started doing the sourdough bread from that.
I don't think we were like crazy bread people, but it was, you had time to figure it out. But that was also one of those items that was never in the store.
Oh, yeah.
It was like cleaned off the shelf every single time.
Yeah. But yeah, and it was like us being a little bit more on the health conscious side of it too, was like, well, this is probably going to be better than buying anything you can at the grocery store, which that's another thing, like just going back to the gluten intolerance or like, oh, I can't have bread. It's like, well, the bread you're having from the grocery store is just, it's not real. It's dead. It's whatever. It's like making bread. You realize like how alive that food is, it's a living
it's
food.
Very delicate.
Yeah.
It's very delicate.
You set it on the counter and all of a sudden you come back 3 or 4 hours later and this dough has grown. It's doubled in size. It's like, oh, there's like stuff in there living.
Or like when you first had to test like the strength of it, and it's like you can see almost like it's like fascia in your skin. It's like you could see the membranes of the bread, it looked like.
Yeah.
Like, as long as it's strong and they can hold itself together, then they'll be able to withstand the heat or whatever.
Yeah, it'll be good to put in the oven. Yeah, it all that stuff. I think is like the more, which it sounds maybe kind of crazy, and I don't know, vegans don't maybe like hearing that, but all the food you should be eating is living. Like it should be able to rot on the counter. We just had it.
Oh my gosh.
Don't buy 2 watermelons. Like you're not gonna
If you-
get through them.
And those watermelons were
They were on their
so
way out.
large.
Yeah.
So
We had
large.
a freaking watermelon explode in our apartment.
And like actually, I was sitting at the table and it was on the table, and it all of a sudden I just started hearing like almost like a faucet sound. I was like,
Yeah, just like water dripping or pooling up.
and then I looked and there's a huge watermelon juice puddle underneath this watermelon, and I'm like, oh my gosh! I went to grab the garbage and
I picked up the watermelon.
and it just like
Yeah, it just burst, and watermelon everywhere. Oh, and it stinks, and yeah.
which
But it's like
how
that is
wild.
food. That's what food
Yeah.
is supposed to do.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to let something sit in the on the counter or even in the fridge for 7 months and it stay alive. Unless it's like you're fermenting something, but that's a whole different story. You're canning something. That's a whole different story. But like I think people know what we're talking about when it comes to that stuff. It's like your
How-
food's supposed to rot and die and
Yeah.
be gross.
How good is doing the sauerkraut lately? I'm
Yeah.
really digging it.
I
I forgot about it.
I want to do it ourselves. I want to figure out a way to do it ourselves.
I know. I have to. I either do have to do it for longer, or maybe I should maybe even ask your mom. Like, I don't know if I just prepped the vinegar wrong. Like, maybe you're supposed to
From
heat
what-
it up, or I don't know.
From what I know or from what I've heard or whatever, I think you have to it's a process. It's not like it's ready in 3 days.
So you have to have like several jars going and
Yeah.
in circulation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it takes a while for that to ferment properly and
Okay. So it's
that
like
sort of
kimchi
thing.
where you bury it in the ground and 5 years
Yeah,
later
I
you
might
get it
have
back
to
out.
bury it outside. Yeah. Yeah, there's I think there's little tricks you maybe are able to do to speed up the process a little bit, but then again you're starting to get into like is it not as healthy or good for you, or you're not getting as many nutrients and stuff like that. Like what people will do with the bread, they'll heat up the yeast so that it like
Rises quicker.
so that it rises quicker. But and I don't know if it would ever really be enough temperature to kill bacteria, but there's the potential that you could be killing bacteria because of the heat. Bacteria doesn't like it dies
Yeah.
from enough heat. So
Yeah.
now you're maybe not getting all the healthy bacteria you want in your bread, or could be what you're fermenting. So
But I'm pretty sure when you pickle something, you use hot water and vinegar mixed. But I don't know. Maybe that's
Yeah,
just like a
I
quick
think you're right.
pickling, potentially. Maybe that's not like. Yeah, maybe that's the
yeah, I don't know
quick
the
and
quick version.
the speed up version. That's not actually
Yeah,
the proper way.
if
to
you
do
don't
it.
have 5 months to
Yeah,
pickle something, yeah, I don't know.
man. I mean, how many people would say like if you could go back to any time in your life, and they'd probably say like high school or college or something like that. Mine would be COVID. It was so good. We had been coming off of our life just being, in my opinion, awesome, and then it just kept becoming more awesome. And I mean, you brought it up with the gyms. I just am thinking about all the flashbacks of seeing YouTube videos of how to make a garage gym, and like we were talking about doing that. We were talking about getting a house to then do the garage gym and just like have it all set up super cool. It just
Yeah.
seemed like all the things that we were putting into work were fun.
Well, I think it might sound bad, but it's like I'm sure for a lot of people it was a good
Break.
break and a good checkup. Like, is this anything I want to be doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Is this how I want my life to continue? Because you can
Yeah.
just get into the hamster wheel of it, and there was a moment in time for people to kind of see what should I be doing here, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think it gave a little A little bit of positive. It's also that. It's like you can either look at stuff in the positive or you can look at it in the negative. Your
Yeah.
choice. Like, want to be all complainy about how it's not good to talk about a bad situation in a positive way. It's like, well, guess what? You're cynical.
Yeah. Well, and thankfully for us, like we weren't affected by it in a health aspect of it. It's like all the things that we were experiencing in life were just like, oh, we were trying new things. We had more time. There was this mental space that I at least got to that I tried to keep of like, oh, no one's progressing right now. So I don't have to have the stress of like, I'm fighting everybody to see how good I can get. Like, well, everyone's kind of at a pause. So it's okay to relax because everyone has to relax. Granted, we were living in California at the time. So it was heavily,
Yeah.
there could be some people who are like, we were shut down for 2 weeks. How are you?
Yeah.
Do you live your life that much? But
Yeah.
we were, yeah,
We were shut down
whatever.
for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to hear about COVID anymore.
No, probably not. Probably not.
Well,
Speaking of gym stuff.
yeah, I think I don't know, we thought about this idea to talk about this a couple days ago of just going, because there's probably a lot of people that are stuck in what they're doing right now, and it's, I don't know, it's always a good time to like kind of come back to this conversation and talk about switching things up, changing things up in the workout atmosphere. I think even potentially in the diet if that's something interesting to you, or sleep or any of that kind of stuff, but just like how and why to kind of change what you're doing for those things if it's needed. Workout seems to be the major one, your exercise routines and that sort of thing of like let's switch it up, let's get something new going. I think there's a lot of reasons why to do it. I mean, some people are plateauing and they're not really getting anywhere with what they're doing, so they need to mix things up in order to kind of break those barriers for whatever goals they have. I think some people are really bored with what they're doing and they're maybe starting to fall off their routine. Like maybe they're starting to skip days or not go as much because they're just getting so bored with it. Some people are dealing with injuries and problems that continue to persist, and this is another reason why to switch it up and do something else. So I think this conversation can kind of fit anybody at any time or a certain moment in time, because there really could be any reason that it's a good time to change up your workout routine specifically.
Well, I think a lot of people fall into that of we all, I think most of us like a specific style of working out, whether it was the first thing that we tried or the first thing that got us the results that we liked, that then we have this chokehold on it of it's hard to venture out of that because it's maybe nerve wracking of trying something new. You have to learn other things or the potential of it's not going to work. That that is one thing in my fitness span of time has been the easiest and coolest, I think, aha with that is I would get so regimented and just doing the same thing where I would adjust it a little bit, but at the end of the day, I was just pretty much doing the same thing that it took changing what we're going to be talking about. If you're changing the adaptation, it's like I didn't have to work harder. I didn't have to go to the gym more. I didn't have to put in more effort. I just had to switch it up, and that is enough for my body to go, oh, okay, cool, thanks. Now we have something new to focus on and dial in on.
Yeah.
That I think it makes progressing easy because you're not having to progress as in adding more. It's just switching it up.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of the times people think, okay, I'm hitting a plateau, or whatever the reason might be. The idea is usually just to add more, which can work sometimes, but that tends to only work when you're not getting a lot of activity to begin with. It's like if you're already somebody that's going 3-4 days a week, hour workouts, hour and a half workouts, it's like, yeah, you could add a little bit more, but that's not, I mean, I don't know. It's like it's not necessarily the most efficient way if you're already going that much. Like something more efficient could be changing up what exercises you're doing, or all of the little in between things of those, of like we talked about, the tempo, the how you're like I've started to do this different. It's not really different, but within the reps of like when I'm getting to that, like a chest press, if I'm once I'm getting to that depressed and I'm opened up, like I'm trying to open up even wider and then hold for a second and then push up. So it's like even just changing the way that you're doing your repetitions. For the longest time, all I've ever done is like come down, touch, push up, come down, touch, push up. That's all I've ever done, and that's mostly what I've done with every single exercise. Bicep curls, squats. Like I've never kind of come down, hold for a second, and then push up. There's a lot of stuff that can come with that, of now your ego is taking a hit because you can't lift as much. So you're going to have to get over that. But I think all of these things that we talk about, you have to get rid of that emotional tie to whatever you're dealing with.
And with what I'm saying of the progression, I don't just mean with your physique or like you're going to progress by looking better or you're going to get stronger. It's also a progression in your mobility. It's a progression in you getting farther away from injury. That, yeah, your ego might take a hit, but that's temporary, because now if you can add a new tool to your tool belt and you can potentially with that, it's like you're probably expanding your mobility because you're sitting in that stretched position and then almost relaxing and then forcing, you're producing force out of that. That will probably allow you to become stronger over time. So it's like your ego has to take a hit for a little bit, but it's gonna pay you back double later on.
Well, and and even that with the ego thing, it's like you gotta get over it.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing this for your health and your own thing. Like, who cares if some guy is watching you do bench press with 40-pound dumbbells and thinks you're stupid and silly? It's like he's an idiot. So who cares? Like, it's not about him. It's not about competing with him.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're literally in a power lifting competition, sure, you maybe need to do different stuff. But it's like 95% of us are just going to the gym to be healthy and have our own unique goals. That it's not about anybody else. So
yeah, most of the time, no one's paying attention to what weight you're picking up. They're not paying attention to what you look like or what you're doing. I think the only thing that people notice is if it's like, okay, there's someone that looks like they kind of know maybe what they're doing based off of how they look, how they carry themselves, their comfortability in the gym. Like there's this confidence that you have in the gym that's probably going to be the person that's getting paid attention to, that whatever that person is doing, whether it's a huge jacked guy and they go pick up the 10-pound weights and do whatever. It's like, I think the ego thing, just if you do the things that are going to make you healthier and make you better, that's when people are going to start to pay attention to you. But it's going to be doing the things of whatever you do is right to them. The people that are going in there and, ego lifting, it's like no one's paying attention to them because they're looking at you and you're probably not getting the results by lifting that way. That's like, no one's paying attention to that.
Yeah, I disagree with everything you're saying.
Cut it.
I think
Cut
like
it out.
I'm always paying attention to what everybody's doing. I'm not necessarily judging anybody, but I know that guy just picked up the 25s and now is doing shoulder press or doing dumbbell fly or doing something, or I see that person has, they're doing lat pull down and it's at 180 pounds, and now I'm watching their form and seeing how they're doing that. And
do you think that's because I guess I am similar to that, to where I do that as well. But do you think that's the trainer side of it? Like, do you think an average person is clocking all that?
Yeah.
Oh, you think so? Really?
Yeah, your dad does.
Well, my dad just judges people. My dad will notice everything about you wherever we are at. We can be in a grocery store and he is really going to buy that brand.
But that's kind of to my point. It's like, yeah, everybody's paying attention to everybody all the time. We're all paying attention to each other. I don't think people are just like going in there like, I don't notice anything and I'm just working out. I love the message that you're saying, but it's not real. It's not true.
I love this fairy tale that you're talking about. But
yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're probably right.
I think it's a good place to try
You're
to
probably
get
right.
to. But I think most people are going in like, oh shoot, like that guy just grabbed the 90-pound dumbbells for chest press, and I know I can't do that, so I'm gonna grab whatever weight I grab, but then you watch him and you're like, well, his form's maybe not as good. He's obviously strong because he can do that, and he's pushing up the weight. But like I've also been here for 2 years, and he's always done the same thing over and over again.
Okay, so maybe this is where I'm need to readjust, because maybe I'm thinking from my perspective. I am paying attention to people, but it's not from a. I think most people in the gym don't know what's going on and don't have the knowledge or have the awareness, or like they're just going in there and like what we're talking about. They've learned one way of working out and they have been just doing that forever.
Yeah, sure.
That I'm if I see someone just ego lift, I'm like, yeah, of course you're going to do that. Like I really dial in if I'm like, oh, someone's doing something different. Or it seems like by your physique, you probably are strategic with what you're doing. Or I see you come in and you're doing different types of stuff, or you're mixing it up, or it seems like that I think is where I dial in. The other people, yeah, I may notice, but I'm not hyper focused on what they're doing because I'm just assuming it's going to be like everything else I see.
Sure.
And then I just go more like, man, people are really not educated about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is probably like what you said, through the lens of like you're coming from a place where you have a lot of experience in exercising in a lot of different ways, and you know a lot of different things. So now when you see somebody doing something, you're like, oh, that could be a little bit more efficient if they did it this way, or if they dropped the weight and did a little bit better form, and oh, their form's actually a little like you can tell like the way that they're doing it, they've been taught how to do it kind of weird. So, oh, if they could learn how to do that a little bit more correct, like you're kind of coming from that trainer point of view, or that like high experience point of view, and whatever. I do the same thing, but
You just have more judgment.
no, I really don't. I don't judge that much. The only thing I judge is when that person has a ton of attitude and ego about it. That's what bugs me. So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't care how you lift. I'm going to lift that way at some point. You know, I have before and I probably will again. Of I'm grabbing the 90s. I'm like coming down, touching my chest, getting off, because like I'm working on strength and I'm working on trying to get like those numbers high and whatever. So form might be a little bit worse, but that's great. It's when that person then slams the dumbbells down and stands up and flexes in the mirror and has his stupid fucking headphones on and just keeps flexing and looking around and puffing his chest out and walking around the gym, getting everybody's way.
Yeah.
And then comes back and does it all over again. And it's like, that's the stuff I don't like. I don't give a shit that you're picking up 90-pound dumbbells and doing it. Like, that's awesome. You're a strong
It's everything
person.
else about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's those like actions like that. It is pollution to the air.
It's pollution.
Like, you know how
yeah,
it's
because
like
it just irritates everybody.
it's like noise pollution. It's like, okay, you're adding so much to the space that is unhelpful.
Yeah.
That's like your whole being in here is polluting the space.
Yeah.
That's such a tangent.
I know.
On
I
this.
want to just run down that.
We haven't really had that in a long time. I mean, we don't
go to gym.
go to gym right now, but
yeah, don't be that person in the gym. Like, just don't.
I want to be the
Don't be
person that was like, she was
obnoxious.
here today.
Yeah, one. It's like, I don't know. I just don't get why. And to go back and ratting on social media, I think this is partially why. But I just don't get why it's cool now to just be a jerk or just be obnoxious. Like, I don't get it. The people in the gym, the people in the grocery store, just people in public now. It's just like, why do you have to be rude? It's really not that hard just to be nice and just to like try to notice that other people are there and move around. If we all were just understanding that other people are in the vicinity and we need to work together and move around each other,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, everything's fine. But these people that are just, they think they're the only person in the world,
Yeah.
and they're in the middle of the fucking grocery aisle, and they're looking at 17 different cereal boxes. And they're pulling them all out and looking, and the aisle doesn't fit more than 2 people, and you have this whole line of people waiting for this person, and they just like nobody else is there.
Yeah. I like the sneaky people with that. I
Yeah.
like the people that are sneaky, really good at what they do. They're sneaky rich. They're sneaky super in shape. Or it's like, it's just you see the guy or girl at the gym, and you're like, you just look like a regular person. But like, they're super strong. Or if you saw them without, like, with less clothes on, you'd be like, they look incredible. Or like, they're healthy. You see their skin, they look good. Their hair looks good. That to me is so much cooler than the opposite of what we're talking about, the pollutant people. Or it's like
Yeah.
everything about you just oozes you want to show this. It's like it's so much cooler when
Yeah,
it's
the
like
show-offs.
underlying, like, whoa, what? You
Yeah.
can do that strong? Or like you
Yeah.
can do that? Or like that to me is cool.
Yeah. We got to get back on topic. This is going to be about a whole other podcast about a whole other thing.
Okay, so can we do it more organizational, like a list, like
Yeah.
go through how many different, like if this was a science experiment, how many different elements within, say, the workout that everyone is already doing, what are different things that they can adjust to get a different stimulus?
I think the like kind of shotgun approach, or like the big broad approach, could be you're just completely changing kind of the goal of the program. It's like you're doing a bodybuilding type of program. You're doing a body part each day. You're doing legs one day, chest one day, back one day, and you're just doing kind of high volumes on those days. Great. And now you go, okay, I'm going to completely switch it up, and I'm going to go full body every single day. So that's going to give you a different stimulus, because you just went from one body part each day to now you're doing full body each day. Another could be you're going to go to like a HIIT type of training, like an interval type of training.
Well, can we pause on that? Can we not go into the styles of training more, like, say if I'm gonna continue to do more of a body part split, or I'm doing a 1 day lower body, 1 day upper body, going through like the tempo changes or pause reps or those kinds of elements.
I think yes.
Sorry, maybe you were going.
I'm trying to break it up of like, the first thing you could do is just completely change that. It's like, I'm not doing body part split anymore. I'm going to do full body. And you're keeping you're keeping the tempo the same. You're keeping the, like maybe volume the same, even if you're able to kind of figure that part out. Exercises, you're maybe keeping the same. You're doing everything the same, but you just went from body part split to now full body. So I'm more so just changing the workout as a whole, and not so much the interchangeable parts. So it's like you could do that. You could go to like a HIIT type of training. You could go to the interval type training, which we can dive into those of what those mean too. And even for runners, it's like some people are they're training to run as far as they can and for as long as they can. You could completely change it to like starting to do sprints, and then same thing, like interval training type thing. I'm going to sprint for 30 seconds, and then I'm going to walk for 30. I'm going to sprint for 30, walk for 30. So you could just change the whole mold in general. And then more so what you're talking about of like going into, say you're doing a body part split, you really love it, you want to continue to do it, but you want to like get as much out of just that as you can. The things you can start to change is like your tempo of your exercises, which is like how, like what I was talking about with the bench press. How slowly am I coming down? Am I pausing at the bottom and then pushing back up? You could do it. I'm coming down fast and pushing back up, which is a little bit more of like a speed and power type of training. You're trying to get the bar off your chest, so you're trying to do that quickly. Typically, then you'll load it with a lot more weight, because you'll be able to, that quicker pace allows you to push more weight for whatever reason. I don't know the specific sciences behind it, but I think it just
I
has
wonder if
something
it's a
to do
momentum thing.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with momentum and whatever. But you could go to that. You could go to, typically we all kind of find our natural normal pace that we like. and it's just basically splitting that up or
I mean,
breaking that up.
that's where like I like to talk about the nitty gritty of those types of things, because I think they make such a difference. You don't realize. Well, I didn't realize. I didn't realize how much the same I was lifting. Like all my programs would change, but my tempo would stay the exact same. I am a trudge through it type of lifter.
Yeah.
That now you're telling me like in the squat, go down and come back up.
Yeah.
It's like it is a different movement. Now my form is funky. Now I don't know how to push the weight in the same way. My muscle endurance is trash. I didn't know that it was trash. Like I could not keep up with that speed. It's like, well, I've been adjusting all these different elements, but I could have been keeping the same program and just adjusting the tempo, and it is a whole new game.
Yeah, you could definitely keep the same program and just change the pace at which you're doing the exercises and lifting.
So I guess I wanted to just clarify, because maybe that seems like, well, what's that going to do?
Oh yeah,
It's
a lot.
wild.
We and I think it's important to start with a very like normal, neutral pace, because I think when people are starting to get into it, they want to learn how to do it safely and whatever, and you should do that. But then as you get comfortable and you know how to do the exercises, you know what to activate and that sort of thing, you can then start to play with that tempo a little bit of, okay, let's make it a little bit quicker, like the explosive kind of work. This is what a bunch of athletes do. This is what football players do. They're constantly training explosive type speed or explosive type training so that they have more speed and they have more quickness and more power and stuff, because so much of the game is about those things. So you can start to do that, and then your body's going to change from that and form to that. It's like why marathon runners are thin, skinny, and not much muscle or fat to them, and why sprinters tend to have this like, it seems a little bit different nowadays. It seems like they're a little bit longer still, but they're muscular and lean, and you can see they have muscle, to where the marathon runners, you just don't see that. It's like, well, that's based on the type of training that they're doing. It's not that their body just was all of a sudden born to do that. They've trained, and that's how their body is formed. That's why a lot of the sprinters all look the same. Marathon runners look the same. Running backs look the same. Quarterbacks look the same. Like they're doing the same types of training, so their body's forming to that. So the tempo, you could also slow everything down. Like, and a lot of people will do seconds, 3 seconds down, 1 second pause, and then try to do 2 seconds up type of thing. You could do that sort of thing. I typically don't count. I just have been doing it for a while, where I know what's slow for me and what's fast for me. But the tempo, yeah, that's a big one. I mean, even like I was saying before, of just trying this new type of tempo of stretching even more in that bottom position and then holding that for a second and then pushing up. My bench press isn't impressive. I'm grabbing 35 dumbbells and doing it 10 times, and that's challenging. The last 2 reps for me are hard to get going and hard to get up, but like you're still getting a lot out of that, especially when it's a different type of stimulus and different type of training that you're not used to doing.
Could you go through like pause reps?
Just pausing at the bottom or pausing in the positions?
Like any of them, like explaining how many different varieties that you could use that, what the point of it is.
Yeah, the way that I'm using it now for the pause rep is so that I can get a little bit more ability, but there's also some studies that show that it could be a little bit more beneficial for hypertrophy. So it's like you could be getting a little bit bigger muscle for doing that, of having that pause, like really stretching down and pausing and then going and pushing back up. But the pausing, I mean, you'll pause in the position that is difficult, I guess you could say, or like the in between part of the rep. So like with bench press, you're not going to pause at the top. You're already flexed out. You've already like completed the rep. Where you would pause is in between, is down low before you have to do the second part of the lift. So for every lift, there's a concentric phase, an isometric phase, and a eccentric phase. So the eccentric is like with chest press, where it's coming down and you're loading everything in. And then the isometric is that hold position, that pause you're talking about. And then the concentric part of the lift is when you push it back up. And these tend to change too, depending on the exercise. just the eccentric and concentric part sometimes flips. But most of the time, it's the eccentric part is the come down. You're squatting down and coming down. An example where it's kind of different is the, I think, deadlift. You're starting at a concentric part of it, and then you have to, or no, you're starting at an eccentric part of it, and then your concentric pull up, and then your eccentric is like on the way down is the second part of the lift. But that pause, there's, I mean, from what I've done or what I know, there's not a whole bunch of variety with that really. It's just pausing, holding for a second or 2 seconds. You could do, like what we have at the studio of training the kids. Like they're not really strong enough to do push-ups, so we do push-up holds. So we'll get into the push-up position and just have them hold there for 5 seconds or something, and then the idea is to grow from that. But it's like if they can't do a push-up, people do this with pull-ups a lot of the time too. You can't do a pull-up. What you could do to train that is the isometric holds. Get up in that position, like a pull-up position, hold as long as you can, and then slowly let down. And we do that with push-ups too. You could do that with bench press, or you could do that with any exercise. There's something beneficial to the pausing, that isometric part of the lift. You're starting to activate and gather more muscle fibers to help you lift, but there's a point of diminishing returns where you don't have the strength or they start to fatigue, so then it gets out. But it's a good way to like get into that position. Say it's a bench press, you're in that position and then you're kind of squeezing but not pushing up. In that pause, you're starting to recruit more muscle fibers, so that can be a good way to teach you how to activate that area.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is why I like the pause reps for that reason. I think there's 2 ways to pause. Where is it a mobility thing? So say with chest press, if people struggle to get their elbows behind their back, like behind their center, if they can't have that stretch, they can't have the mobility in their shoulder, that's where I would maybe cue the sit there and let it sit, let it stretch for a second. You're not gonna be able to lift as heavy. It's more of just having your body practice tiny bits of load in that stretched position and then be able to move out of it. But why I like it too, for the sticky parts, you had me do it with squats, because when I was at the bottom, I was like, everything's turned off. Like I'm not feeling any part of my muscle until I got to like 90, and then everything would fire back up again. It wasn't because my muscles weren't, like, they were obviously working because I was standing up, but the ability to know how to activate certain, am I using my quads more? Am I using what? Like I had no control and mind muscle connection to that you would have me sit at the bottom and then think about flex everything.
Yeah. Activate.
How does that feel? How do you activate? How do you gain more muscle activation with that, or muscle fiber activation with that? So then when I start doing squats at a regular tempo, my body is kind of has that understanding, or we're developing the understanding that I like pause reps too, for being able to slow it down a little bit. Say, yeah, like I said, with the pull-ups or your lat pull down at the bottom, take a second, now squeeze everything.
Yeah.
So then I know when I'm going through, if I'm not feeling that same thing that I felt in the pause, something isn't happening, or I'm not focusing on something, or I'm not activating something as much as I could.
Yeah. The idea a lot of the times is you're trying to recruit more muscle fibers to make the lift more efficient, make it more effective, be able to lift more weight. Because you'll see with a lot of people, if they haven't worked out a lot, they don't have the experience, or they haven't even really trained in that way. Something like squat or bench press, or a lot of exercises, like they'll completely neglect the isometric part. So like with bench press, they'll come down, they'll basically drop the bar on their chest and bounce it and then push it back up. Some of that is just, it might be they're lifting really heavy and you don't want to put a lot of load in the isometric phase. You want that momentum like we were talking about. But there's a lot of people that's just the way that they've learned how to lift and how to train. And that part is they don't have the muscle recruitment in the isometric phase. And that is actually making it harder for them, not harder, but that's hindering them from being able to lift more weight, because they don't have the muscle recruitment when it comes to that. So it's like
Those type of people
you're-
that can do crazy numbers on bench press, but you ask them to do push-ups, and they struggle because like they
Yeah.
can't lower themselves to the ground. They like flop on the ground and then have to push up.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to bounce off of like they can.
they don't
with
have the momentum, and
Yeah.
so it's you're kind of missing something there if you're just kind of doing this bounce technique. Or with squats, you see it a lot with squats, especially with training kids. Like they just want to get out of it as quick as possible. So they'll just like kind of start to slow it down, and once they get to maybe 90, they'll just drop and then come back up out of it. Towards like you're now not recruiting any muscle in that bottom position to do anything. And you'll see even a lot of people that don't have that type of pace. They'll just drop down into the squat and then they'll start to come back up. And it's like that transfer period. It really is the eccentric to concentric period. You're switching. They're trying to avoid that isometric phase at all costs because they don't have the muscle recruitment in that position.
Mhm.
To where if you're able to practice and gain that, that's going to help your lifts, lifting more weight, being in more control, like all that kind of stuff moving forward. And especially when you go to try to do other types of training, the carryover in that will be good too, because it's going to, different types of training is going to force you to do that. And different exercises are going to force you to do that. So the more that you can practice that and do those things a little bit more correctly, the better. That's why I'm kind of doing it now, is for the mobility aspect of it and because of the hypertrophy part of it. I just like, it's that thing of, they talk about with bodybuilders too, like if you see higher level bodybuilders or even just like people that have been working out for a really long time, they go into the gym and they kind of don't look like they're doing that much. And it's because they've figured out how to make it the most efficient. They're not going in there, pushing balls to the walls type of attitude. It's like, I'm going to grab the 35s and do bench press with them, but I'm going to make them extremely efficient. Like I'm making the weight heavy type of idea. Like I'm going to go down really slow. I'm going to pause at the bottom. I'm going to stretch even farther, and then I'm going to push up from there. And then as I'm pushing up, like I'm thinking about contracting my chest as much as I can. Like there's people that go in there and just do the exercises. And then there's people that go in there and are like, they are trying to maximize and get as much out of the exercise and make it as efficient as possible, feel it as much as possible. So I think that's kind of a big difference or thing that you can kind of tell with people is, are you going in there and feeling the exercises? Or are you going in there and getting through them quickly? Versus the people that go in there and it's like, I'm going to feel every single second of this exercise. Like every time I bring the bicep curl up, like I'm thinking of flexing as hard as I can or 90% and really like activating my bicep. And then as I'm lowering down, I'm going slow and I'm thinking about my bicep stretching out and like the tension that there is of I just want to drop the weight, but I'm not going to. I'm going to let it slowly go. I get to the bottom. I lengthen out even more, almost like hyperextend my elbows to get as much stretch as possible. I hold that for a second and then I bring it back up. It's like that's the tempo we're talking about. Like that is a totally different stimulus than like, I'm going to grab my 20s and I'm just going to do this 1, 2, 3 and like pump it out. It's like there's
not
benefits
that
to that.
Yeah, not that that's bad either. It's depending on what you're programming in.
But that's just more common. The
Yes.
uncommon thing is to like, let's really slow it down and lengthen everything out and then like really contract everything and feel it all.
That's what's really cool with fitness to me is people that are so proficient in their avenue, whether it's bodybuilders or really clean CrossFit people. Like their agenda is efficient and effective.
Yeah.
They're not going in there trying to make it the hardest workout possible. They want to get something out of every workout. It's not just, I'm going to go in there and go through the motions to get activity. Like I'm in there to do something.
The high level
if I'm going to do something, I want it to pay me back.
Yeah. The high level people.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people that go to CrossFit or go run marathons or whatever that they're not having that same intention. But yeah, totally.
Cool. Benefits of changing rep ranges in your volume. That's another thing I think we get very stuck in.
Yeah,
is
totally.
we like our rep ranges of what feels comfortable.
Yeah, I think people get stuck in the rep ranges. I also think that the rep ranges is the most common thing to change. And once you've like changed them enough times, they just don't, you're not getting as much out of your workouts as you could be compared to like now change the tempo or now change the workout program or what, other things basically. But the rep ranges, I mean, you can get strong in any rep range. You can build muscle in any rep range. Where you're going to get the most benefit is doing the rep ranges that you do the least often and the ones that you maybe don't like the most. So for me, I tend to like to stay in 10 to 15, 10 or above, to where I don't like doing 5. I don't like doing less weight. I don't, for some whatever reason, I just don't like it. So it now benefits me more to do those because I'm less likely to do them all the time. I think there's some, like, when you're getting to the higher percentage of people exercising or whatever, or you're getting into a really kind of niche group of, I want to get really, really strong and I need to push as much as possible. The strength portion of it, the lower the rep range is typically the better to build more strength. But you have to kind of consider, like, I'm building strength within that rep range at 5. If I'm only doing sets of 5, I'm doing 5 sets of 5 or whatever. I'm going to get really efficient at doing 5 sets of 5, and I'm going to get strong in that. There will always be some carryover into now doing sets of 10. You'll probably be able to lift more weight after you do that program of building strength in the 5 rep range. You'll probably be able to do more at 10, probably be able to do a little bit more at 15. But the same happens in reverse too, of doing some at 15, doing some at 10, doing some at 5, whatever. Like 15 rep range is going to help you in the 10 rep range. 10 reps are going to help you in the 5 rep range. So it's good to do all of it. And if you're plateauing, if you're getting bored or whatever, typically changing the rep range can be a way that you break that monotony up and also break through plateaus. If you're always sticking in the 5 rep range because you just want to be as big and as strong as possible, it would be beneficial for you to go to 15 or go to 20 because that's going to be such a different stimulus to you. And you're probably going to see a lot of things happen and change. Your body's probably going to change a little bit. You're going to get stronger in those areas, in those rep ranges. And then when you go back to the 5, there's going to be, like, what I noticed was this, like, level of efficiency that was kind of weird. Sometimes with the 5 rep range, you get so stuck in just like the grit and the grind and pushing it up. And then you go to the 15 rep range and it's like you tend to focus a little bit more on form and how you're doing stuff. Then when you go back to 5, you're like, holy crap, my form feels a lot better. These feel a little bit more efficient, and I'm able to lift a little bit more because of those reasons, because you fix some form issues and efficiency issues with that. But the rep ranges, it used to be this, like, if you want to get strong, you lift in 5. If you want to have hypertrophy, you lift in like 10
8
to
to 12,
12
yeah.
or 8 to 12. And then if you want muscle endurance, you lift in the 15. And it's like all those things are still still true to a certain extent, but you're going to get hypertrophy in all of the areas. You're going to get strength in all of the areas. You're going to get muscle endurance in all of the areas. It's just also the range that you're sticking to where you're getting that kind of benefit from. That's why you need to mix it up, because if you're only doing 5 repetitions, you could get a ton of hypertrophy and get a lot bigger if you were to go to 15. And also you're talking about like potential, it would be more so in the reverse of, like, if you're only doing 15, you're not getting as much muscle fiber recruitment as you would maybe be if you were doing 5. It's kind of like we talked about with the isometric. You get into a position, you're trying to squeeze and hold, you're activating more muscle fibers. Well, for me to lift up a 10-pound weight versus a 20-pound weight, I have to activate more muscle fibers. So if you can't do a 100-pound squat 15 times, you're never getting that practice of recruiting that many muscle fibers. But you can do it when you do 5 repetitions. So now I can lift this 100 pounds, do it 5 times. I'm able to activate more muscle fibers to lift those. So now I'm getting practice in activating more muscle fibers. So then when I go to do 15 repetitions, I have this practice of activating more muscle fibers and I've gained a little bit more strength. So now I can do, a little bit more weight than I was doing before, type of thing.
Or in the same way of reverse, if I like the low rep ranges, now me going into the 15 to 20 rep range, my tempo increases a little bit because I'm doing more reps, so that consistent speed of down and up, down and up, down and up.
Yeah.
Well, my struggle with squats was I go down and then I down
Yeah.
to where
So you're going
when
through
I'm
honey.
trying to keep that speedier tempo, now when I go back to the fives, I know I need to push the same speed the whole way up. Even if it's a slower tempo, there's no break in that. Or my endurance per se with that, my gas tank is a little bit, maybe not even better, but I'm just more aware of, well, I could do that here with 15 to 20. I could keep that going. I need to be able to do that over here with the lower rep ranges. I think also with the rep change, another factor with that is the rest period time
Yeah.
that a lot of us, I think we want to, well, not for me. I will wait too long. I'll have 7 minutes between each set. But a lot of people, I think they want to just keep going, keep going. That the benefit of also changing the amount of time between your exercises might allow a different stimulus to happen because you're actually getting down to heart rate is lowered, your muscles are getting a little bit more of a recovery rest in between so that you're able to go at it at 90% every single time.
Yeah. Well, and I think, going off of what you mentioned before of the kind of the muscle endurance part of it and helping you with the 5 rep range, like if you do the 15 rep range or you do the 20, we've done 20 before too, and um that was fun, or like I saw things from that too. But you do those high rep ranges, you're starting to build a little bit more muscle endurance. So then when you do go back to the reps of 5, you don't gas out after 2 sets. You have a little bit more of a gas tank to be able to go, into the third set, fourth set with maybe keeping the same amount of weight. Because a lot of times too, when you're doing that rep range, you're exerting so much energy that you do your first set with 100 pounds and the second set you already have to go down to 80 because you can't get 5 reps. Well, training in the higher rep ranges will help it so that when you go back to that 5 rep range, you can go 100 pounds and then second set 100 pounds and then maybe third set 100 pounds and then you maybe have to trickle off from there. But like that, having that endurance training, muscle endurance training, a little bit of higher rep range training can help you in those lower rep ranges too, to be able to continue to push maximum amount of weight every single set. Which then going into kind of what you were bringing up before of the rest periods, like typically when you're in the lower rest periods, you're going to give, or lower rep ranges, like 5 repetitions, you're going to give a longer rest period because you're pushing so much. You need a little bit more time for the muscles to recover, for ATP to build back up. That's a little bit more sciencey than it needs to be, but you're basically letting your body come back to a state where you're ready to push as much as possible again. So you need a little bit more time. Now, when you're doing 15 rep ranges, the weight is much lower. So you don't need as much time in between. And it can benefit you to have a lower rep range because you can then get more work done, more efficiency done. You can get like um, just working the muscle more frequently gives you a different type of stimulus, and it's kind of a different intention compared to when you're doing just 5 repetitions and I'm pushing as much weight as possible. You're kind of working on strength and muscle recruitment and power, and the higher rep ranges you're working a little bit more on like hypertrophy and muscle pump and blood flow and that sort of stuff.
Talking about ATP or like your energy and that, another one I thought we could bring up is your programming and the order at which you do things.
Yeah, that can make a big difference and stuff too. I mean, typically what the advice is to do your highest energy expenditure exercise first because you're going to have the most energy for it. And throughout the workout, I'm sure everybody kind of knows, but your energy does dip out. Like you start to have less and less ability to lift things, to run farther, to sprint more. You literally have less and less energy to call upon to use. So they typically say you do your highest energy expenditure exercise first, so that because it's also the one you're probably going to get the most bang for your buck out of. Squats, deadlifts, barbell rows, bench press. You want as much energy for those as you can because you're going to get the most out of them if you can push them the hardest and the furthest versus like a leg curl or leg extension. You don't need a ton of energy for those, and also the amount of benefit you're going to get from those probably isn't as much as the squats. That's something that you can play with too, and that will give you a different stimulus. Is if you've been doing it one way for forever, change it up. Like sometimes it can be beneficial, or it is good to, I'm going to do squats at the end of the workout, and that's going to be like my, you know, not burnout, but like that's going to be my finisher, and it's going to be hard. But I think there's other things that you can get from that, of like just grit, and like you're having to focus a little bit more on form. So like your focus is getting tested of, am I going to just give up on these exercises because they're late, because they're last in the workout? Well, with squats, you really don't want to mess up form. Like there's more higher percentage of injury in that exercise compared to leg extension. So you're kind of working on grit and focus and that sort of thing. There's not a ton of like hypertrophy benefit to doing that, or strength benefit to doing that. You'd still, for those reasons, you'd still want to put it at the beginning. But if you're looking for just mixing it up and trying something different, you can change up the order of that stuff for sure.
And that's where I think it's a behavior aspect of it too, of what do you tend to like? What are you leaning towards? Because I know for some people, like taking two people that we used to go to school with, Arneson, he always used to start his workouts with like 10 sets of squats. And I'm like, that would be my whole week of workout. But for him, it was like, but then everything after that I do is going to be easy. To where then there was Blake, who would start with the leg extension and leg curl as a primer to all the things that he was doing. So I think that could also be something, is switching up even how you're warming up or you're priming certain muscles. For me, when I was trying to work on specific physique goals, that's where I would switch up the program of, okay, well, I'm really focusing on building out my hamstrings. I'm still going to probably do the more compound lifts to start out with, but I'm not going to start with bench press in my workouts. I'm going to start with a leg focus thing because that's the goal that I'm working on. So I'm going to have the most energy for this specific goal.
Yeah, totally. If you have a thing that you're wanting to put a lot of focus on, just put that first.
Yeah.
Because you have the most energy for it, and you can push the most for that thing. So you're going to get the most amount of benefit and efficiency for whatever it is you want. Don't put it at the end because it's your favorite thing. I want to save it for last. It's like, well, you're kind of hurting yourself a little bit because you don't have as much energy to push it for those things. It's like people who want to get like really crazy abs. Well, everybody puts abs at the end of the workout. It's like, if you want to get really crazy abs, do them right away in the beginning, where you have the most amount of energy and it can be the most efficient and get the most benefit out of it.
Yeah. I almost see workouts as like a tier. Like you start with your biggest compound, heavy, crazy, like a Sunday. Like you start with the meat of it. You start with the ice cream, and then all of the accessory type works, like those are just the toppings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it. I mean,
yeah, one way.
If that's how your program is kind of set up, like perfect.
Yeah.
And then there's
sometimes where it's all the ice cream and you're just doing the ice cream.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, yeah, we got chocolate, vanilla, we just got different flavors. No toppings. Everything is the meat.
Okay, now can we get into, unless you have any other factors within, maybe we could get into different styles of working out?
I think changing the exercises is something. Like, people will tend to just do the same exercises over and over and over again. And working on, like, if you're always doing squat, you're always doing barbells, you're only ever doing barbells, switching to dumbbells and doing that kind of unilateral training, one arm at a time, one leg at a time. You're doing lunges, or like a, leg up split stance kind of lunge, or lateral lunge where really only one leg is working, or if you can do pistol squats, or like working on pistol squats, or you can even kind of do a squat with like having your leg on the ground, but just like kind of placing it back so that you can kind of put the focus on the front leg and squat down on the front leg. But switching up your exercises so that it's, which I think this one's more common than the rest, but there's still probably some people that have been doing the same routine for a long time, or even they have a tendency to like, I'm going to make a little workout program, and they still pick the same exercises they always do. They just
It's
put
just
them
in different orders.
they just put them in different orders, and it's like, there's some benefit that can come from that. But when you kind of take a broad view, okay, so your month is exactly the same as it was before. You're doing the same exercises, the same amount of times, the same weight. It's just, you think it's a little bit different because it's placed differently in it. It's like, well, over the month, you're still doing the same amount of volume, same exercises, whatever. So
I think an easy route to figure out what you're doing or to figure out how to switch this up, like if you listen to this episode and you're like, okay, I'm going to do a new workout program, but you're new to programming and you're wanting to do it yourself. I think what was helpful for me is like literally creating a spreadsheet of what are all the different lunge variations? What are all the different squat variations? What, like all the different elements that you can choose? Because say with squats, how many times am I putting front squats in there? How many times am I changing my stance? How many times am I doing sumo squats or right? Like I would just go, well, I'm putting squats in there. Like, but it's the same squat every single time. Or I'm doing lunges, but I always do walking lunges instead of stationary. Or I never do what is it called? The one with the backup. Why can I not think of it?
Bulgarian lunge.
Bulgarian lunge. Like I'm not utilizing every aspect of this movement that then when you go into program, you can go, okay, well, last week or last program, I only did walking lunges. Now let me mix it up so that you're still getting a full body. You're still getting all the elements, but you're mixing up the stimulus of how you're doing it without having to track that on your own. Because I think sometimes if it's out of sight, out of mind, if we don't use it regularly, we kind of forget about all the different plethora of types of activity or exercises that you can do within those. That's also where I think you can spice it up and get creative with it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the exercises, just changing them. Going from literally changing the exercises or going from barbell to dumbbell. If you don't do machines, add in machines.
Cables.
If you only do machines and cables, don't do cables and machines. Like switch it up to dumbbells and barbells and stuff like that. Resistance bands, find ways to add those in. Body weight stuff. I mean, it's kind of crazy, like how the people that do exercise frequently and go into the gym and do their everything with weights can't do pull-ups, can't do push-ups, can't do like lateral lunge with no weight, and like a really good perfect one type of thing.
So or even something as simple as you can do shoulder press when you sit down on this specific bench. Now just have everything standing.
Yeah.
Do your curl standing. Do your overhead tricep standing. Do your shoulder press standing.
Yep.
See how much that changes it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's like, it may seem stupid, like, well, push-ups, why would I have to do like 15 of them to get anything out of it? It's like, yeah, so do them, and do the tempo thing. Like, maybe you can do 15 when you do it the way that you always do it, but if you slow the tempo way down, you pause at the bottom, maybe you can only do 10 and see where that takes you and see where that goes. So changing the exercises, changing the type of resistance you're using with all those things we mentioned, dumbbell, barbell, resistance band, all that stuff, switching those up. If you only ever do cable flies, go to dumbbell flies. If you only do dumbbell flies, go to cable flies. If you only ever do, lat pull down with the one attachment, maybe switch the attachment, or like start doing pull-ups. Do, what is it? Assisted pull-ups if you can't do pull-ups on your own, or do weighted pull-ups or dips or weighted dips. There's an assisted dip and pull-up machine in every gym now. It's like you could start working
bands with it.
Yeah, do bands. So switching those up, I think, is another thing to the little bit more specifics in the programs.
I don't know if this is just, feels back to the roots, but this episode is getting me like so jazzed for fitness. I don't know. It's like thinking about all the different, like we've been switching up our workouts so much lately of doing only different things.
Oh yeah.
That's just like thinking about doing a old school back to the basics type of workout. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. That sounds so
good. Yeah.
We're kind of starting to do that more now, and I'm like, I am excited to work out again.
Oh yeah.
There's something about that too, like just going back to what is comfortable with what you like versus always challenging yourself. I think that's fun too. Is we've been doing different things that going back, it's cool to see, oh, this kettlebell program helped me get better at this. Or because
Yeah.
we were doing 2 seconds of the performance thing, I'm realizing how slow I
Yeah.
lift.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's any other different factors within those, or could we get into like different genres of working out?
Yeah, we can do the genre. Yeah.
Go for it.
um
And I think we can just spitfire ones out. We can dive into any of them deeper if we want, but I think for me this is the when you maybe are not deep into the fitness space, it's hard to know what all different styles are. And then like
yeah.
we didn't ever do kettlebells until a couple years ago. It's like they've been around, but they just were not in our
Yeah. Yeah, I think the more common ones, or the ones that are seem to be a little bit more fuller program-ish ones, is like a bodybuilding type one, where it's like you're doing a body part each day, chest one day, back one day, legs one day. Um, I think they tend to call it body part split. There's some people that still with that same sort of intention do like a upper body, lower body type
push
of
pull
split,
day.
a push pull legs, the push being all of your push muscles, which is like chest, tricep, maybe shoulder. Shoulders considered a push, but um, it can kind of be interchanged in the push or pull. I think some people will split it up into both just because it's where the volume ends up being. It's like you're doing chest, tricep. Um, this is also nitty gritty, but like some people will do push pull days, so it's full body, but it's like I'm doing chest, tricep for the push day, shoulders, um, quads, and calves, maybe even. So like they're doing all of those, maybe even glutes. Yeah, I guess glutes would kind of be push. And then pull days, they'll do back, biceps, hamstrings. That's where I say like shoulders tends to be the one that kind of floats into both,
Yeah.
because push day, it's like
It gives activation for both.
there's so many more versus the pull. But then some people will do push pull just for the upper body, and then they'll do just like a general legs day, so they won't put the legs in that push pull category. The bodybuilding stuff is typically 8 to 12 rep range, 8 to 15. People kind of blend it all now, I think, because of what the studies tend to show and what tends to work. Is it's like people will do a body part split. We'll do 5 reps and do that for a little while, and then they'll go to 15, and then they'll go to 10, or they'll work up. Maybe they'll go 5 for 3 weeks, and then they'll do 10 for 3 weeks, and then they'll do 15 for 3 weeks. But the bodybuilding type of thing is just, it's generally speaking, it's just like you're going for hypertrophy training. You're trying to get your muscles bigger. You're not really going for anything other than that, and you're kind of playing with the rep ranges a lot of the time. And
I think the name of the game is efficiency. Like trying to really understand activation through the muscle. You're able to understand the contraction of where it's happening, when is it happening, where am I weak in certain spots, so that you're able to get as much blood flow to the area.
yeah, you're trying to pump the muscle. You're trying to get as much, everything you just said. It's mostly focused on the feeling the muscle and feeling the exercise.
Which also comes into your form.
Yeah.
When you're pushing a little bit heavier weights, like you're maybe just focused on getting the weight where it needs to go, to where it's like, no, you're not slowing things down, but you're focusing on perfecting the movement rather than your numbers.
Yeah.
You want to be like this. I think of like a sculptor, like you're a savant of the movements and the exercises, not the
robotic rigidness.
The numbers. Yeah. Like people that work out like that, it's like it looks pretty almost.
Yeah. And that's what's weird about the bodybuilding type of exercising and whatever now, is there's so much more information now that like everything helps hypertrophy, everything helps strength, that it's more just this like blend of everything rather than it being what it used to be, a very strict, like you're doing a 15 rep range program, you're doing like these exercise. You wouldn't really see bodybuilders do a ton of deadlifts because it's not a great hypertrophy training exercise, and they were so much more focused on the muscle and building the muscle, making it bigger, making it more defined, all that kind of stuff. Deadlifts and there's a ton of debate over all of these exercises, whether they build enough hypertrophy or not. But um, some like big lifts like that would typically be shoot out a little bit, and the hypertrophy lifts would be more of the focus with those bodybuilders. Chest flies, you know, the squats weren't as important, but they wouldn't do like heavy barbell squats. They would do like front squats to really activate the quads, but they do a little bit lighter and do a lot of repetitions and leg curl, leg extension, and hack squats and um, chest press. They do, but maybe stick more to dumbbells rather than barbells, because the dumbbells you get a little bit further of a stretch with it, and you can kind of, I don't know, just feel the muscle a little bit more with that. They start to kind of push out the quote unquote strength building exercises, less and less barbells over time, and do more dumbbells, to where then on the opposite with like strongman power people, they're using a lot more barbells and everything is really high weight, and they're not so focused on hypertrophy and like feeling and pumping the muscle. They're more focused on how much weight can I push and how do I make that as efficient as possible. So their actual like the tempo is different, like we talked about. How they're lifting the weight is different. They're not like focused on how do I stretch everything as much as possible and then contract everything as much as possible. It's literally just like, how can I go like as little distance as possible and then as little distance up as possible with everything. So this is where you see, you know, I think a big difference. Like bodybuilders will do squats ass to grass all the way down, and power lifter strength people will typically just go to 90 and then go back up because they're just worried about the strength and what they have to do to get more and more strength. So, but I don't know, going into some of the other ones like the CrossFit type thing, the hybrid type of workouts, CrossFit, HIIT training, implementing endurance with um, strength, weightlifting type of stuff. So you're doing a little bit more, you're focusing more on like, why can't I think of it? Rest periods and that sort of thing. You're pushing the endurance part of your exercises a little bit more than a bodybuilder would. A bodybuilder is so much more, and strength, they're so much more focused on having enough energy to do the next set. So they're going to take longer rest periods, to where like CrossFitters, it's timed events. And even if you're not competing, like the ideology of it is hybrid. I'm going to have a lot of endurance and a lot of strength. So they're working on both at the same time. They're doing, whatever, 10 repetitions of hang cleans, and then they're going on a 100-meter run and then coming back, and then they're jumping into deadlifts or something, whatever. Doesn't matter what it is, but they're like continuously going, go, 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 go. There's really no rest periods for the CrossFitters. And then that's their workouts, and they're kind of working a hybrid of both. The interval people, it's like you're just kind of doing, like that's more so what we were doing or have been doing a little bit more, like with that kettlebell program. It was a kettlebell program that was just strictly kettlebells, so you're only using one sort of resistance training device. We used resistance bands as well with that, but we wanted to just completely mix it up. We had always just done barbells and dumbbells, so we were like, well, let's do kettlebells because we see that all the exercises look a little bit different. They seem like they work a little bit different. You have to carry the weight differently. The load on the weight is different. The exercises are different. So we're going to do this with resistance bands, but then we're going to add this kind of interval training type of thing where you're getting 30-second rest periods, and then you got to go back into it, and then 30 seconds back into it, 30 seconds back into it. So that sort of thing is another way that you could mix things up or do something different. I think what's crazy is like kind of going into that conversation of like hypertrophy, what builds the most muscle and makes you look the most big. From when I was in high school till, I don't know, the last 4 years or 5 years or whatever, 4 or 5 years ago, like the idea that I'd always heard was like, if you want to build size, you need to lift heavy weight. So I always wanted bigger legs and would do heavy squats, heavy lunges, like deadlifts heavy, anything I could to do heavy for to make my legs bigger, and they just wouldn't. Like it just nothing would work. And we do this kettlebell program, and the first phase of it was what, like
It was all the 20 rep ranges,
20 rep
but
range.
it was, I don't know if it was just straight 20 rep ranges or if we did the like ladder.
I think it was straight 20 rep range. The second phase of the program was 10 rep range. And then the last phase of the program was you start at 20, then the next set you go 19, then the next set you go 18, 17. And we went all the way to 1. And my legs grew more in that program than probably any program I've done. And it's like, it was literally the opposite of what I had heard and had done for
Well,
how many
and
years.
wouldn't you say the reasoning or the bigger reason is probably because it was such an opposition
Yeah,
of
totally.
stimulus.
Yeah.
Like it's what this whole episode is about is
Yeah.
you switched it up. You confused your body that it needed to adapt. It gave it something else to get excited about and to focus on.
Yeah.
Like I think about, as much as we talk about with this kind of stuff of being connected with your body, the way that you can be connected with your body in this way is think about it like a kid. Like you want to keep them switching focus to keep them engaged. You have to keep switching it up on your body to keep it engaged.
But yeah, to keep
Like you
a
want to
new
confuse it.
stimulus and give it something to adapt to.
Yeah.
If you've been doing the same thing for forever, your body's adapted to that and it kind of knows what's going on and what it's doing. You need to switch it up.
It's the same thing with the caffeine.
Yeah.
How your body gets adjusted to having more and more and more. That's the same thing with working out. Your body's like, okay, I got this.
Right.
We don't need to grow anymore. I'm not going to give you anything else. Switch it up on me.
Right.
Give me something else to do.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not a compliment or a thing to say like, so actually the high rep range is what builds hypertrophy or makes your legs bigger. It's the change of stimulus that I haven't ever had before and was way different with using kettlebells, and also the exercise that we were doing were way different. Like lateral lunges, I've never done a full program or done those consistently to see what happens from them. And I think those were like a huge part of why my legs got bigger. So it's like even that, completely different exercise, completely different type of resistance, interval type of training that we hadn't done in for forever. So like it was a lot of moving parts that were different that I think made my legs a lot bigger. But the main thing being like it was just a completely different stimulus that helped change everything.
I was just looking through our programs. I like how, like, what categories we did of them because they were all like going back through and thinking like trying to do any sort of strength training for me was, what was I even messing with? What was I trying to do? But that I had so much fun when I ran a version of this that you created for me when we were in California. Like that is my first time where I was like, holy crap, I didn't realize my body could change like this. Was going to more of a strength protocol of like 5 and under. And that was it.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Like you don't want to change it up. You like what you're doing. You like the routine that you have, or those things are just scary and you don't like them. You know, it's like for me, it's like I don't like the 5 rep range, so I tend to stay away from it. To where it's like, well, the longer that you stay away from that, the more that becomes the thing that you kind of need to do in order to get your body to change the way you want to, or just to like to add a new tool, like you had said before. So for anybody that's plateaued or they're stuck in a thing and they're still wanting their body to change and to do something, it's probably the thing that you dread and don't like the most. or just something that you've really never done before that you need to go to in order to like get through and have your body change and grow. I think that's what's funny too about we have such this idea of what we want our body to look like and what to happen. So we put so much emphasis and focus into that. And then I think sometimes what happens is you get to a certain point where it's just like, I've put so much work and time into this, like I just don't really care anymore. And then you just like, I'm going to do something completely random and whatever. And you change a bunch of these things up that we've talked about. And now you do that for a long time. And all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, like my arms look way different than they did before.
Mm-hmm.
And it maybe wasn't the thing that you were wanting or needing um previous, like me with the legs. It's like I want my legs to be bigger, I want my legs to be bigger, and then you just like give up on it and you're like, whatever, I'll do something else. And then all of a sudden you do a completely different program and you're like, holy crap, my shoulders are like popping out or whatever. I think that's what is kind of funny with our brains is we get so focused on needing or wanting this one thing, but when we see our body change, we are typically excited no matter what it is.
Yeah.
When it's in the positive direction, where it's
Yeah.
like, holy crap, like my arms are getting bigger. And it's like that. It looks cool. It looks like full and it looks like nice or whatever. So I think even some of that, just sometimes you got to detach a little bit from your goal or your wants and be open to doing a new program that's going to change your body in whatever way. Because you're probably going to people just like seeing something happen.
That's what I think is a benefit of, and I wish we don't have any pictures of you with any of these. I feel like I have so many of, if I went through a different type of program, I typically have pictures to show so that I can go back and go, okay, what kind of style body do I want for whatever is about to happen or something, that then I can go, okay, well, my legs when we were doing the kettlebell program, I've never seen them that like defined, and I had different muscles popping out that I ever have. It's like, oh, this is cool that it looks more cut, so I know what that looks like. To where when I was doing the first round or first time of ever doing more of just a strength building program, I wasn't focusing on what I was looking like. Like I just went in the gym, was like, how heavy can I push this? I want every week my numbers to go up. So like I wasn't focusing on are my abs showing, because
Right.
I'm eating a little bit more, so I am denser. Like maybe we could put it in this. Like I have a picture during that phase, and it's like my shoulders were huge. Like everything on me was just thick, but like the numbers that I was able to lift, I'm like, I never would have thought I was capable of this. So it's cool to look good, and that feels good, but it also feels really cool to be dense and to be strong and to be able to lift things up. Like I don't know, so obvious, but like especially as a girl where that is never really prioritized. It's like, holy shit, this is a new like level unlocked of I feel confident because I just feel like I'm a little bit more capable.
Yeah.
And in the same way of doing a more athletic-y type of bodybuilding, feeling light and feeling like I'm never getting tired and I can walk for miles and never get exhausted. But after doing the strength building program, and then when I leaned out, like the way my arms looked, I've never seen them look like that either, because I had built up muscle that now I just take away some of the food that I was eating because I'm not exerting it as much within my workouts. Now it's like everything is just tighter. So my skinny version, or when I lost some weight, it just looks tighter versus that skinny fat look.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Because you built a bunch of muscle, and then you leaned out a little bit, and it was showing that muscle through a little bit more.
So me
You had more
getting
muscle.
to my heaviest that I had ever been, I come out of it looking the leanest that I've ever been.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is like the aesthetics or the visuals is always like not, I shouldn't say deceiving, but like kind of, it's like you were the heaviest but looked the leanest.
I'm saying like when I came out of that program.
Yeah, but you probably were still a little bit heavier than when you were in high school, and you probably looked leaner than when you were in high school.
Yeah.
So it's like you're heavier but leaner looking than previous times.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and it's just a visual thing. It's not, you maybe weren't, or you maybe could have been because of the muscle to fat ratio in your body or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like it's just a visual thing. A lot of the times, it's not even so much, which also gets into a different part of it of like, is that a positive thing? I don't know, of being healthier versus visually more what you want to look like. But yeah, I mean, it's yeah, a lot of times it's just like, oh, I look aesthetically more how I want to, and that had to do with not losing a bunch of weight. It was actually the opposite. It was putting on more muscle
Yeah.
that made me look that way.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing that I can think of for like a reason why also to change your what you're doing is like injury prevention type of stuff. Like people that do the same thing for a very long time and do the same exercises, the same tempo, the same everything. And it doesn't even have to be like they do the same 6 things every time. It's they just do the same general stuff all the time. You're just like what we talked about with like neural pathways of you're kind of like running that truck through the snow tracks, and that just gets deeper and deeper and deeper because you're running through the same pathway and stuff like that. If you have some sort of pain or injury or whatever, and you're just continuously doing the same thing over and over again, I think somewhat of that same idea is like you're just continuously re-aggravating that over and over and over again. And especially when it's that like chronic pain that just persists and has just been there for months and months, it's like you need to switch things up because this isn't working for whatever's going on in your body. Like if it's your knee or whatever, it might be the exercise that is doing that. It might be the tempo at which you're going. Like maybe you're dropping really quick and trying to explode out of it, and your knee is just not in a position of strength or mobility to be able to do that. So it's like you need to address those issues by changing things up and doing something different. And then when you come out of it too, it's like you probably need to continue to address it in some sort of way of maybe I'm going to just switch my workouts or switch my leg exercises up a little bit to, it's not to cater to the knee, it's to do different things so that I can build strength within it and around it, so that when I go back to doing whatever exercise that seems to aggravate it or things I was doing before that was aggravating it, I have a new knee that can do these exercises and can handle it. But if you're just sticking to the same things over and over again, like you're probably just going to keep those injuries because you're not doing anything different and you're not addressing that issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that could be another sign for people that it is time to switch it up.
Yeah.
Is if you are starting to notice tweaks in certain, like that's when going back to the one the first time I did the strength program, that's when I knew I needed to switch out of it because my shoulders were starting to throb and get aches and pains, and my hips were starting to hurt every time I did squats. That's like, and it's also going back to last week's episode of the recovery with those programs. Some people do. For me, I changed my whole lifestyle around that. It's like I was eating very different to work within my programming. So I may have been getting to the point where like I can't keep pushing the calories this much. Like my body is feeling a little bit inflamed. I am pushing the weight every single time I'm going into workout. So that lasted probably about 3 weeks where I was able to do that. And then I transitioned into a cut after that. And then even seeing that, kind of using my body as a gauge of how long I was able to handle both of those phases. Mm-hmm. And I just saw that of, okay, well, now I'm in the cut and now I'm seeing, okay, maybe I dropped calories way too quickly because I'm sleeping bad. I'm not getting through my workouts as good. I'm getting headaches, or I'm noticing that my recovery of it's taking me several days for the muscles to get back to not feeling fatigued, or that I think the tiny preview of an injury, which I think a lot of us just push past and we see it, we chalk it up to the name of the game of working out, as the soreness or the fatigue or the brain fog, the lack of like the sleeping kind of being funky, your appetite dramatically switching to where you're really hungry to where then no, you don't want to eat. Those are your initial signs of, okay, maybe your body's like, okay, we're good with this. Time to mix it up because we can't keep running on the same track.
Yeah. Yeah, to mix it up, and going back to the last episode we did of like, and it's not recovering properly for whatever reason, and that could be because of the workout programs.
Yeah.
Or whatever type of exercising you're doing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I like this episode. I would say if anybody, no one's gonna comment and no one's gonna ask for them, but I'll just still put it out there. We do still have a lot of. Well, I guess would you say that you would still feel good about giving people programs?
Yeah.
Like, do you like those ones still to give
Yeah.
out? If anybody wants any program that's already pre-made and you don't have to then listen to this episode and go, well, I definitely should mix it up, but I don't know what to do. We have a lot of different ones that we've created.
Yeah.
And just are sitting there. So
Yeah.
if you want to do them.
Yeah. Anything else?
Nope. Now time for us to work out.
Yes, it is. All right.
See you next time.
Yep.